Welcome everyone to our first panel of the day. I'm Leila del Duca, your host and organizer of this day, and I am with my studio mates, and in a second I will let them introduce themselves. Without further ado, I guess I'll do a better introduction of myself. I'm Leila del Duca. I'm a cartoonist living in Portland, Oregon, like all of these other people except for Dan Schkade. And I got a little bit more traction on the comic scene when I started working on Shudder at Image Comics. And that comic led to some other creator-owned books like Sleepless that I drew. And then Afar, a graphic novel I wrote that was drawn all of the art was done by Kit Seaton. And my most recent graphic novel was Wonder Woman Tempest Tossed. So I got my start in creator-owned comics, and I'm kind of switching gears and doing more work for hire for like DC. I also run the Helioscope YouTube. That's it for me. I'm going to drop a link to my website in the chat, but I'm going to let my colleagues take it from there. Jon, how about you go first? You're the first in my grid.
Sounds great. I'm Jon Hallman. I also live in Portland. Mainly, I write comics, so I try to collaborate with a lot of artists unless I'm self-publishing zines. My last web comic was Like a Potato that I did with another studio member, Hopscotch Sunday. So we published that one as well. And you can look that up at likeapotatocomic.tumblr.com is where it lives right now. And yeah, so I write comics and then try to publish zines independently as well. The last one I published and is out in stores. If you live in Portland, you can find it at Cosmic Monkey Comics. Things We Don't Post. It's a pretty big one. So yeah, that's some of my most recent work, and just trying to continue writing and collaborating with artists here in Portland.
Awesome. Thanks, Jon. Kat and Ron, you guys can go next.
I'll start. I'm Kat Farris. I am also a member of Helioscope. I feel like that's redundant since you know why you're here. We're all here for that. I am probably best known for my work as the artist on My Boyfriend is a Bear, written by Pamela Ribon. It came out from Oni Press a couple of years ago now. And yeah, this is probably my best known work. But I also did an issue of Plants vs. Zombies with other studio mate writer Paul Tobin called Snowbanks. And I have a book coming out July 13th of this year called The Ghoul Next Door. I can't believe I spaced on that. I don't have a visual representation. I pulled a random page. It's all watercolor. It's written by Cullen Bunn. It's lettered by Aditya Bidikar. Like, it's a powerhouse team. We're very excited to see this come out this summer. And working on volume 2 right now of the same Ghoul series. And that's about it for me.
I am Ron Chan. I'm married to this one. And I'm also a comic book and storyboard artist. Primarily, I'm known for the Plants vs. Zombies books. This is one of them called Dynamite. I don't remember if it was 7 or 8 volumes of it, something like that. That's what I'm most well known for. Like, more recently, I've done some covers for some Stranger Things YA graphic novels. And then the most recent thing is that my brand new book, Earth Boy, written by Paul Tobin, just came out in comic book shops on Wednesday. And then it hits major bookstores on April 6th and then digital on April 7th.
Yay, thanks guys. All right, so Caitlin, go next, please.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Like. I'm about to go into my whole convention table spiel. You just about to launch right into that. But yeah, I'm from Portland, also part of Helioscope. I mostly work in independent self-published work. I also do children's history graphic novels for the Show Me History series. I have a book coming out about Helen Keller that's going to be out in early June. And when I'm not doing children's history books, I tend to do self-published queer romance. I also have been a longtime assistant to our very own Ron Randall on Trekker, and I have been for a very long time at this point, which is very fun. And yeah, I work as both an assistant and as a mostly independent creator.
Nice. Thanks, Caitlin. Ron Randall, you're next.
Well, hello, good morning or afternoon, everybody. So check the boxes from everybody else. Member of the studio, live in Portland. What I would be best known for would probably depend on where your comics area of interest is at. I've done mainstream superhero comics for DC Comics. I've done licensed properties, usually at Dark Horse, like Star Wars and Predator and things like that. But what I'm doing these days is focusing my efforts on my own creator-owned comic that I am now funding through Kickstarters. Trekker, my science fiction bounty hunter, that Caitlin, as you were saying, helped out on. The one I just held up is the latest one. I just got the books from the printer, so they'll be going out to backers soon. And I'm having the best time in my career right now, thanks to the backers of Trekker and through the ability to do things on Kickstarter and use crowdfunding to directly produce my own comics. It's just been a real game changer for me and is really making an impact on the industry, I think. It's a pretty exciting time for creators, whether you want to work in the mainstream or do your own project. There's lots of avenues.
Awesome. Thank you, Ron. Dan, you're next.
Well, I'm Dan Schkade. I'm a comic book writer, artist, like everybody else. My first monthly series was the 2015 reboot of Will Eisner's The Spirit, which I did with Matt Wagner and Brennan Wagner. That's also when I joined Helioscope, which was Periscope at the time. And now it's Helioscope, which is a great name that I came up with along with Paul Guinan. Since The Spirit, I've worked designing layouts for covers of Lego video games. I've done wrestling comics and informative comics about frogs. But my current gig, which I've been doing for the last 3 years, is my webtoon series Lavender Jack, which is sort of a combination of a superhero story and a early 1900s mystery adventure story. And working with webtoons is great because it's just a really exciting format. It's all scrolling digital comics, so in a lot of ways it behaves almost more like film than like a traditional comic book where you're looking at one panel at a page, you're really guiding the reader's eye. And it's also probably the closest I'll ever get to becoming a work-a-day, 1940s newspaper cartoonist where you're grinding away, churning out these, stories about people chasing each other and getting stabbed under a rigid deadline for an audience of thousands. It's pretty cool. I'm having my own Ron Randall era of my career right now, and it's really working for me.
And when does the next Lavender Jack chapter come out?
We are about a fifth of the way through making the season, and hopefully it'll come back sometime between now and June.
Cool. I'm going to ask the first question I think would be appropriate, which is, Ron Randall, will you tell us how the studio formed?
Yeah, this goes back to about, we've been around for a while now. This goes back to around 2001, 2002. There had been an earlier, smaller studio here in Portland with a handful of members. It had been disbanded for about a year or so because of people moving away and stuff. But a couple of new cartoonists had moved to the area, and we started meeting informally outside a local coffee shop, just at a table there, and we like once a week or once every other week, just to touch bases and do a little shop talk, swap notes about what was going on. And at some point, somebody said, maybe we should make this formal and really form a new studio again. And there were about 4 or 5 of us that were doing those early coffee meetings, and that led to searching for a space, and we spread the word out to a few other cartoonists we knew in the area. And we found a space in downtown Portland, of this funky old space with tall ceilings and wonderful light coming in through really tall windows. And about 8 of us made the studio, which we called Mercury Studio back at the time. I can try to name us all, and I'll probably forget 1 or 2, which would be whatever. But certainly, Steve Lieber was there, David Hahn, myself, Paul Guinan, Carl Kiesel, Matthew Clark. Those people, maybe 1 or 2, again, named that slipped my mind. Then we Portland was at the time becoming, for whatever reasons, a nexus point. A lot of cartoonists were moving to the area, established professionals, brand new people just trying to find a way into the industry for a lot of reasons. Portland's pretty livable. Dark Horse Comics was here shortly after Oni Press started up, and so it seemed like a good rich comic rich environment. Also, there's always been a strong do-it-yourself sensibility in Portland. Anyway, so that's how it started, and gradually over time we just collected wonderful cartoonists and have had this amazing group of creators that I think we all have a great deal of mutual respect for, and also just genuinely enjoy one another's company. It's something of a miracle, I think, that it's grown this big and lasted this long and is still thriving.
Yeah, John Baker. Oh, go ahead.
I've heard stories, you were saying, of the kind of the original flock of creators coming to Portland. I've heard stories that Mike Richardson, the owner of Dark Horse, he was actively courting cartoonists to come to Portland. Like, he was like a big part of that. Is that true?
I can't speak too definitively about that, but yeah, I mean, I do know that there were at least some creators that Mike was sort of in a good way, I guess you could say, headhunting or talent hunting for them. Thinking, if those guys are here in the neighborhood, it's easier to get together and spitball ideas with them, come up with books, pitch projects to them, because Mike was that sort of a guy. In a way, I think back in the day, Dark Horse was kind of basing its model on the early Marvel days, when Stan Lee would get together with one artist and they'd bounce around ideas and come up with something, and that shoot from hip spontaneity, I think, was part of Dark Horse's early model, and certainly having crack cartoonists, living just down the block from you would certainly facilitate that. So like I said, I know that was a little bit in Mike's head. Remembering back, it's a good point. And I can easily expand that, since Mike's such a big idea kind of guy, he would really want to cast that net out pretty wide and be pretty aggressive. And, he was a pretty effective guy, pretty effective salesman. So I think, he did get some really good people to move here. That was definitely part of it for sure.
Yeah, Anina just verified that. Everyone who doesn't know, Anina Bennett is a member of the studio. Cool. Yeah. So you said, Anina, that's true about Mike Richardson, Paul Guinan, her husband, and I moved here when I went to work at Dark Horse. There was a whole wave of people who moved to Portland in the 90s because of Dark Horse. Awesome. Thank you for adding that. John Baker asks, how many members does the studio have now? I think last we checked, it was around 30, right?
Yeah.
I think so.
Cool. So speaking of cartoonists in Portland, there was another studio full of cartoonists, illustrators, writers that Jon Hallman was a part of. It was called Tranquility Base. John, can you talk a little bit about that before you and Tranquility Base members merged with Helioscope?
Yeah, Tranquility Base was downtown as well. It was definitely a smaller group of cartoonists and writers, and I actually met most of them through my friend and who I collaborate the most with, Hopscotch Sunday. We had been looking for a space to make more comics on a regular basis, and he had found a spot at the studio and invited me to join as well, and that was really fun. And about 4 of us were able to move as well. Les and John Ceruno and Hopscotch Sunday all came to Helioscope from there. It was my first kind of studio experience. So it was pretty exciting to be able to work around that environment where I can go somewhere and kind of sit down and be around people trying to do the same thing I was doing, and be able to talk ideas out and troubleshoot different ideas as well. So that was really exciting for me, just to be in that environment. And I think, like, before, I had always heard, like, getting into comics and doing comics on a regular basis, a lot of it's kind of like who and opportunities that come up. And I was really lucky to kind of ease into that situation and start at Helioscope to write on a more regular basis. And that's where we did Like a Potato. And then we were able to get an invite from Helioscope, which was amazing.
Steve Lieber has joined the room, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. Now that you're here, Steve, are you ready to do that?
Just about. Plugging
Shooting
things in.
Steve with a low angle lens to make it intimidating.
While you're setting up, Steve, I'm going to ask the interns who became members, what was that experience like? It's Caitlin and Ron and Kat. Were you both interns as well?
Not technically. We came in with other friends that were interns, but we were never technically interns ourselves.
Okay, cool. Because I know I have a student of mine in the audience. Hello, Damien. So Caitlin, will you let us know what the intern process was for you?
Okay. I started interning at Helioscope, or joined the mentorship program after I graduated college. I went to college in Dallas, Texas. That's where I'm originally from, Texas. And I majored in art and performance, but I was drawing a lot of original character tournament comics on DeviantArt. Dan knows what I'm talking about. And got a lot of comics experience through that. I had a friend who was part of the mentorship program, Rhiannon Rasmussen, and they told me about the program, encouraged me to apply. I applied, I got in, graduated college, and then moved to Portland. And I started in March of 2013. It was a good experience for me. Like it's a lot to get used to, especially graduating college and then immediately moving across the country, going into a different kind of work study.
Caitlin, when you cackled and said it was a lot to get used to, what were you thinking of?
Just the fully leaping into it, the moving across the country, like 2 months after graduating college, and just full tilt sprinting into the dream career that I had been wanting for ages. And what really was great about the mentorship program was Yuki Sayeki, who was the other person I was mentoring with. And we really bonded. I got to collaborate truly for the first time at the mentorship program under the supervision of everyone else at the studio. I got to collaborate with a peer for the first time. And Yuki and I put together this book that I still have. It's called Children of Loki. We did a 2-part Viking story. And I got some really invaluable experience, like working with a cartoonist who was my peer, and then getting real world kind of like knock in the head, like this is what this is actually like, experience from other people who worked at the studio. Then I just kind of clung around for a long time. And I formally joined the studio, I think it's 2 years ago at this point. I've lost track. The pandemic kind of scrambled the when I formally joined phase.
Cool.
But yeah, if you're considering the mentorship program when it opens up again, when the world can move around, I highly encourage it, especially getting the chance to collaborate with whoever else you're mentoring with, like, because that relationship is you're going through you're going through it together. It can be a little bit scary.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Caitlin. All right, Steve, now that you're all set up, will you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Steve Lieber. I've been making comics professionally since like 1991. I was one of the co-founders of the studio that became Helioscope in 2002. I've drawn comics for DC, Marvel, Valiant, Image, Dark Horse, Caliber, just about every other publisher out there at some point or another. And I love making comics. It's 30 years into this, it's still my favorite thing to do.
Awesome. Thank you. I do want to say, Damien, my student, says, thank you. Does that mean you can be part of the mentorship program while still attending college? Can one still be part of the internship program or mentorship program while they're going to school?
People have.
I personally wouldn't recommend it because college requires a whole lot of attention and work, and the internship or the mentorship program also requires a lot of time. We don't have formal time requirements, but you'll get a lot more out of it if you're able to put the hours just being in the room, seeing what people are doing, hearing what people are talking about. You get 4 months to sit and observe and absorb what all these other folks are doing. And if you're spending that time worrying about getting to class and doing your class assignments rather than your own projects, you won't absorb as much.
I agree.
I'd say, yeah, you're a lot better off waiting to apply until you've got school behind you, or for the summer portion of the program.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people come like during the summer while they're like in between years at college, which also works out.
I feel like the mentorship kind of works best if you are, especially because if you're in college also trying to do the mentorship program, you probably have like some kind of college related projects in comics that you're already in progress working on. I think the mentorship really works best if you come to it to start like a new short project that you can get feedback on like the whole way through. And I think you'll really get the full breadth of the experience in the room out of that if you're coming in with the bandwidth to start something new and short.
Yeah, agreed. All right, moving on to a audience question. Thank you, David Brothers, for this one. He asks, the studio was always a really welcoming space, but a physical one. Have you managed to maintain those connections during the pandemic at all?
Zoom.
Yeah, we've done some Zoom stuff. For a while when the weather was nice before winter hit, we were doing some outdoor meetups together, gigantic circle in an abandoned field with some snacks. That was pretty fun.
And we've done like everybody else, we have a Discord server now where we post, I don't know, mostly tooth-related horrors.
Yeah. And like food we've been cooking and pictures of our pets doing weird stuff. And Steve posts adorable animal being like friends with each other videos.
I will add that most of us, or the vast majority of us, have not worked from the studio space since the pandemic began. But we do have Jon Saruno, that's his last name. He's been working there pretty consistently. I went in there, but it was masked unless there was no one else in there. Sometimes we'd take that up. But we would have a system where if we walked around, we would put a mask on, and there's so little people in there. And so crossing our fingers, we all get vaccinated this year and we can go back in and work in our physical space together. So here's another great question from David Brothers that's really optimistic, I would say. Can you tell us a little bit about your favorite thing you've drawn in recent memory, even if it's minor or goofy?
I drew an excellent ibex. I drew like the best ibex you've ever seen. I never drew an ibex before, and I nailed it like right out the gate. I'm really proud of that one.
Excellent. Awesome. Ron, what about you? Ron Randall.
Well, it just probably what most people that know me would expect. I've drawn a few of the panels in the last Trekker story that I worked on. Just really coalesced particularly well. And I should give a shout out, if I could, to Alyssa Sala, who is another former mentee at the studio, who is now a crackerjack cartoonist in her own right, and also an editor. And she is editing me on Trekker, and she gives wonderful feedback and input, suggestions and perspectives. And I really enjoy being stimulated by the new. She's like a couple of generations younger as a cartoonist from me, and her influences are much more much different areas, a lot of manga and stuff like that, which is not my background at all, obviously. Look at my hair color. And so she will make suggestions that would never, I've been doing this like Steve, I've been doing this for over 30 years, and she'll just make suggestions that make me see something that hadn't occurred to me before. And that kind of little, doses of fresh air coming in just really thrill me that I can fold those into a series that I've been working on since the 1980s, not steadily, but not for all those years, but it just keeps reinvigorating the process for me.
All right, Kat, Farris, and Ron Chan, what about you?
I guess for the most recent volume of my Ghoul graphic novel, I had to do a double page spread that was an entire city that was covered in plant life. I've only gotten it through pencil so far, but I was able to use a shot that I took when I was visiting Chicago a few years ago and basically trace that cityscape. So I saved myself a lot of work and then just cover all of it in plants. So when I get to come back to it, I don't have to think too hard about what's under all the plants. It's just already there. And I was just so proud of how that worked out, because if I had been writing that comic book, you better believe I never would have written a scene like that in there. Colin really pushed me to go beyond my comfort zone. And I was able to like use some tips and tricks I've learned from studio mates to make it way less of a disaster than it would have been otherwise. And it looks really great. I'm very proud of myself.
That's awesome, Kat. Ron, what about you?
I mean, I'm proud of Earthboy, which just came out. Usually, most of my career I've done just line art, and somebody else has colored it. There are a few things I've colored myself, but this book is just like, all me. Paul wrote it, Paul Tobin, and then I did, pencils, inks, colors, and letters. So it's just a two-man team, and I was proud of my work on Plants vs. Zombies as well, but it was somebody else coloring, and then it was related to a video game property. But then this is just like everything's me, and it's original material. And this is sort of I'm some odd, I don't know, 10, 12 years into my career, and this is my first like creator-owned thing. So it took forever to do, but I'm proud of what came out of it.
Yeah, Ron, that's so cool. I had no idea you were doing all of the art responsibilities. Badass.
Yeah, I just want to say, just jump in really quick and say how excited I am to enjoy all of Earthboy, because how much, besides Ron being just a brilliant cartoonist, I am really enamored of his color approach, and I just really want to revel in that. I'm really looking forward to that.
Thank you, Ron.
Likewise. All right, Steve, what about you? What's something fun that you've drawn lately?
I got to draw Superman being bit and swallowed by a giant metal penis.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Erica would be proud.
It's hard to get paid for that.
I feel like that kind of says it all right there.
Awesome. All right, Caitlin, what about you?
So it's not going to be a surprise if you've been following me on my social media for the past few months, but I got really into Supernatural again. And I've taken it as I've been doing coloring nonstop for the past few years. And I got really back into Supernatural, and I've been taking this as a chance to get back into black and white comics with screen tones. And God, I am really enjoying going back to black and white comics with screen tones. It's so much fun. It takes so much less time, for me at least.
Yeah. Plus, it looks awesome. I love screen tones.
I'm using like the Clip Studio tones. I have friends who can do it like by hand, but it's hard to get the actual screen tones. I would like to try and do that at some point, but just digital black and white with digital screen tones has been a blast.
Awesome. John, do you sketch at all, or do you just primarily write?
I actually have been making some mini comics recently. I joined for the first time a D&D campaign. My friend's doing an all online one. It was my first time playing, so I've been making little comics about our game sessions just for the group. So that's been fun. And I just got a new tablet this last week, so I've been doing digital sketching for the first time. So gonna learn how to do all that all over, again. That'll be fun, I'm sure.
Yeah.
At least keep me busy. Usually when I do my own like zine related material and things I put out just at the local comic book shops, I'll draw and sketch those out myself.
David Brothers, who asked that question, says, I have some friends who stock up on screen tone when they travel to Japan and come back with boxes full of the stuff to share around, which reminds me, the only sheet of actual like Zipatone screen tone I ever had was from Nick Dragotta, David Brothers' friend. And the funnest thing I have had, the thing that I've had the most fun drawing lately was a pinup of Yara Flor, the new Wonder Woman, designed and created by ex-studio mate Joelle Jones. And I had a blast doing it, one, because I got to add screen tones given to me by Nick Dragata on her. And then I also had a really fun time doing this really loose style of plants in the background, but that was awesome. Nick is awesome. I really loved those screen tones and I was really grateful he gave those to me. Cool. So Kai Williams asked a question. As someone who studies workplaces, have you found the studio space before COVID to be more beneficial to your work quality and output?
Yes, all around.
Dorm.
Whole
Well, I
room
feel
full
like
of
it's really
creators
easy.
working.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, nothing like a whole room full of creators working with their heads down at their desks to convince you to stop dicking around and also put your head down and get some work done.
Well, it's hard to motivate yourself on your own. I mean, that's obvious, but also there's so much about comics that's kind of a folk practice almost. Like I always compare comics to wrestling, not only because it's really hard on you and you don't make a lot of money and you kind of have to do it because you love it, but also because there's all these little like tips of the trade and jargon and ways to save time. Like the first thing I learned when I started coming to the studio regularly, and again, I'm on my first monthly book, right, doing the Spirit, and I was supposed to draw this restaurant scene, and I was drawing it overhead like a schmuck, and Steve showed me how if you put a waiter in the foreground and just have like a couple people on a table, then you like create the illusion of a restaurant because your mind fills in like, here's the big waiter in the foreground, here's the couple at the table, I'm in a restaurant, I get it. So just things like that you can't really learn, from a book or from just reading other people's comics. You need a mechanic who can show you how it works from the other side. And the studio was invaluable for that.
I was just going to say that I often say to people that I feel that the primary message that somebody like a mentee that comes into the studio, more than learning, oh, this is a good brush for you to use, or this is a good function that you can discover on Clip Studio or whatever, just the overall mentality of a practical working class approach to getting the work done. It's very pragmatic. A lot of people, when they start off coming out of art school or just coming out of their bedroom with their idea about how they're going to change the industry or whatever, we all tend to be very, very precious about the work that we're creating when we're first starting out. Every line is super important, and the results need to be perfection because of our innate genius that we just need to make sure everybody understands. What the studio, I think, communicates to people, we just sort of just exude it as a space and as a group is, if you want to survive in this, you've got to find practical, efficient solutions, and you've got to settle for 85% of perfection sometimes, or 50% of perfection, because you need to get the job done. And that can sound sort of disillusioning, I think, to some people. But what you find out is that's how you survive, and it's only when you survive that you can really make the really best work. Sometimes the planets don't always line up. You're not always going to be doing brilliant work, but a professional means you're doing good enough work. And on your good days, you're doing great work. And I think if you can't sign on to that deal, you just need to do this for a hobby.
Well, it's hard to stay too pretentious when Dylan McConaughey and Jeff Parker are busting your chops all the time.
That's true. I do want to add, there's like this psychological thing that happens with me, and you guys can answer this too, where I feel like my work is a little bit more meaningful when I'm around other cartoonists. I feel less like, well, what's the point of making this book that it appears no one really cares about? Because as cartoonists, we don't get a lot of one-on-one encouragement from readers and fans that what we're doing is meaningful to anyone, and except for when we go to conventions or have like Twitter exchanges. So to work with other professionals, I feel like I'm reminded why I do this work a little bit more. And I didn't really realize that until COVID happened. And then I do want to also say another huge benefit and time saver with our studio is the ability to take reference pictures of each other to make drawing easier. And I think Steve is probably the person who takes the most reference pictures. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Oh, it's huge to me. I went from using no photo reference whatsoever to using tons of it, basically because I got tired of not being as good as people I thought I was better than. I'll leave it to you to untangle that. Yeah, but it gave my work all sorts of interesting interesting bits of character of life. It made me faster. It made me better as a cartoonist. It made my stuff more interesting. In a lot of places, it made my work funnier because I'm working in a room full of cartoonists and people who understand humor and understand storytelling.
Steve has like an enormous photo catalog of all of us going like making funny faces and hand gestures.
Yeah, I'm both a faster and a better cartoonist because of it. It's been nothing but a huge blessing. And yeah, along the way, I kind of accidentally, just at the margins of all these photos, managed to put together kind of an ongoing documentation of what life at the studio was like. But every one of these photos, there's somebody in the foreground sitting and holding out a fake pistol, and in the background there's people at the lunch table eating or working or at their own desks working or having a conversation. It's interesting parallel documentary of what life's been like in this place for the past 8 years.
I remember there's a photo of, oh, sorry. Well, there's a photo of me on the ground because I've been shot, right? And Dylan's dog, Teddy, just like won't leave me alone. He's all, I'm trying to like writhe in pain, and Teddy's licking my face.
Awesome.
I just wanted to jump in really quickly. If there's anybody out there who's an artist who is contemplating starting to use more photo reference because of this little bit of conversation now, I support everything that's been said here. I just also want to say that invariably, when I see somebody using photo reference, it makes a big difference as to whether or not they're using that photo reference as a support tool or if they're dependent on that photo reference. Steve can take a wonderful shot of somebody doing a cool pose, and Steve, because he's got years and years of experience drawing, he knows what to do with that photograph, how to make little distortions here, how to simplify it down, which lines are important ones to emphasize, and how to stretch the pose or exaggerate it a little bit more to make it feel like it's alive. You can trace a photograph of somebody that looks like it's the most active and vital pose you've ever seen, and it just kind of looks dead if it's an accurate tracing. I've done it, I know. You've got to be able to draw too. So I just want to put that as little asterisks on this short conversation.
Every photo contains a lot of information. Some of that information will make your drawing better. A lot of that information will make your drawing worse. It's your job as an artist to gather up all the good stuff and throw away everything else.
Thank you, Steve. We have 2 minutes to answer this last question from John Baker. When you're stuck on a project, where do you go for the inspiration that gets you past the bump in the road? Do you just fight your way through it, or is there something specific that clears the deck of creativity for you? Who wants this one?
I would say, I guess really quickly, for me, back when the studio existed, like looking over at my studio mates' desks and seeing what the heck they were up to, because all of us think and approach things so differently. Just like looking at like Maria Franz or Odd Cook and like being like, oh, look at what they're doing. Look how they answered that question. Like that gets me excited and kind of snaps me out of it.
I think part of that also goes back to what Ron Randall was talking about earlier with 80% or 50% being good enough, is that as a professional, especially in a comic book world, you're producing, 100 some odd page graphic novel, 5 to 7 panels a page. You're producing an enormous number of drawings, and you simply cannot expect every one of them to be perfect. So you kind of, in some cases, you just let go and you say, good enough.
Yeah. It doesn't always need to be super inspired. It just needs to communicate the information, and then maybe the next page will be better.
Well, cool. Thank you so much. Thank you, panelists, for being here. Thank you for being such an amazing audience members. Yeah, it reassures me that the rest of the panels today might go as well as this one. And a big shout out to Anina Bennett, who has helped me organize this event. I could not have overcome a lot of the problems I ran into without her, and she's been a great guide and just like help along the way. So thank you, Anina. Yeah, I'm gonna call it, but thank you again, and I will see everyone else at the panels throughout the day. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
In a few hours.